Good morning. Welcome. Today, I want to talk about something that doesn't come up a lot in Unity, and that is hell. And I promise this is not going to be the conversation about hell that you might expect. Many of us were taught about hell growing up, the fire and brimstone, eternal damnation, conscious torture that goes on forever and ever with no end, no relief, no escape, a place of unimaginable suffering where you burn for all eternity. For some of us, it was almost funny, hard to take seriously, hard to believe in such a small, spiteful, patriarchal God, where there were clearly other options. Buddhism, New Thought, so many spiritual paths that didn't require believing in divine torture chambers. For me personally, I didn't take it seriously until I saw that others did. And then I tried to believe it for a little while, tried to make it make sense, tried to accept it as the truth, take it on faith, but ultimately it did not resonate as truth for me. It just didn't. But for many people, hell teachings were the only teachings they were exposed to growing up. They weren't encouraged to explore or ask questions or do their own thinking. They were told what to believe and warned what would happen if they didn't believe it. And some people carry real trauma and fear from what they were taught, real terror that was installed in them as children, and they've never been able to fully shake it. So today we're going to explore Unity and New Thought's radically different understanding of what the Bible's actually talking about when it uses the word hell. So the traditional hell doctrine actually teaches, because if you didn't grow up with it, it might be hard to believe people actually believe this. Traditional hell doctrine says if you don't believe the right thing, say the right prayer, follow the right rules, you'll burn in conscious torment forever. Not for a long time, not until you learn your lesson, but forever. Eternity. There's no end. And it doesn't matter if you weren't born in the right part of the world to be exposed to the one true church. It doesn't matter if you were unlucky enough to never encounter a missionary. It doesn't matter if your parents didn't baptize you. It doesn't matter if you were a genuinely good person who helped others and lived with integrity. If you didn't believe the exact right doctrine, hell, that's where you're going. Think about the terror this creates, especially for children. One wrong belief, one wrong choice, one sin, and you're damned for eternity. There's no proportions, no mercy or second chances. You could live 80 years on earth, make one mistake, and suffer forever. The math doesn't make sense, let alone the theology. The standard is impossible. Be perfect or burn. Believe perfectly or burn. And even if you do believe, you better make sure you believe the right version of the right religion, because there are thousands of versions all claiming to be the one and only true one. So here's a question that I think is worth asking. Who benefits from people being terrified of hell? Because let's be honest, this fear has been incredibly useful for those in power. The church amassed enormous wealth throughout history. People who had nothing gave anyway out of fear. Poor families who couldn't take care of their children still tithed to the church because they were told their eternal souls depended on it. The church became one of the wealthiest institutions in the world, built on the back of people who were terrified of hellfire. Fear is a powerful control mechanism. When you can convince people that questioning authority means eternal damnation, they stop questioning. When you convince people that their natural desires and impulses will send them to hell, you can control their entire lives. And this was used specifically to control women. Sexual purity doctrines enforced through fear of hell, obedience to husbands enforced through fear of hell, women told to stay in harmful, even abusive situations because divorce was a sin that would send them to hell. Women silenced in church because speaking up was rebellion against God's order, and rebellion leads to hell. But it wasn't just women. Hell doctrine was and is used to control nearly everyone. Pay your tithe or go to hell. Support the king or go to hell. Accept your suffering without protest, because this life doesn't matter, only the next one does. And if you cause trouble, you'll go to hell. Don't question. Don't think for yourself. Don't explore other ideas. That's the devil tempting you towards hell. Fear is one of the most powerful tools of control that exist, and hell was the ultimate fear. Not just death, eternal conscious torment that goes on forever, your worst nightmare, but forever. So who does the hell doctrine serve? Not the people, not the seekers, not the honest questioners. It serves those who want power, wealth, and control. Here's the fundamental contradiction at the heart of traditional hell doctrine. God loves you unconditionally, but will torture you forever if you don't meet very specific conditions. God is all loving, but created a torture chamber and will put you in it. God is all forgiving, except for this one thing, or that one thing, or those things for which there's no forgiveness, just eternal punishment. Think about it in human terms. Would any loving parent torture their child forever for any reason? Even the worst parent you can imagine, would they set up an eternal torture chamber for their kid because their kid didn't believe the right thing or say the right prayer? If your child rejected you, hurt you, turned away from everything you taught them, would you torture them forever? Or would you keep hoping they'd come home? Keep the door open. Keep loving them, even when they couldn't love you back. And if humans, flawed and limited and imperfect humans, can forgive, can grow, can change, can even show mercy, why can't God? Is God less loving than humans? Less forgiving? Less capable of growth and change? I'm glad Unity teaches something radically different. God is love. Period. Not love plus wrath, not love with conditions, not love until you mess up too badly. Just love. Pure, complete, unconditional, infinite love. So if hell isn't a literal place of eternal torture, what is the Bible actually talking about when it uses the word we translate as hell? Unity teaches that hell is a state of consciousness, not a destination after death. Hell is what we experience when we're separated from our divine nature. We're cut off from our connection with God, living in fear instead of love. Charles Fillmore taught that hell is the mental state we create when we're out of alignment with divine truth. It's the torment we experience when we're identified with our ego instead of our true spiritual nature. It's the suffering that comes from believing we're separate from God. Myrtle Fillmore understood hell as the pain we create for ourselves and others when we lose our connection to the divine. When we choose fear over love, when we judge instead of forgive, when we close our hearts instead of opening them. That's hell, not someday, right now. Hell is separation from divine consciousness. It's mental torment that we create. It's self-created suffering. These are the states we can experience here and now in this life based on our choices and our consciousness. And here's the beautiful thing. If hell is a state of consciousness, then we can move out of it. We're not stuck in there forever. We can change our minds, open our hearts, reconnect with the divine. Hell has an exit door that's always open. Let's look at some specific passages that have been used to teach eternal hellfire and see what they're actually saying. Lake of fire, Revelations 20:14 through 15. The imagery from Revelations has terrified people for centuries. But what if it's not about punishment at all? What if it's about purification? Fire in spiritual tradition has always been symbolic of transformation, a burning away of what's false to reveal what's true. God is refined in fire. Impurities are burned away. What remains is pure. The lake of fire can be understood as the transformative power of divine love, burning away everything in us that isn't aligned with truth, leaving only our true divine nature. Not torture, transformation. The rich man and Lazarus, Luke 16:19 through 31. This is one of the most commonly used passages to prove that hell exists. A rich man dies and is tormented in Hades, while Lazarus, the beggar, is comforted in Abraham's bosom. There's a great chasm between them that can't be crossed. But in this parable, it's not a description of afterlife geography. It's Jesus teaching about consciousness, not mapping out the afterlife. The great chasm is the separation we create between ourselves and the divine through our choices. The rich man ignored Lazarus in life, couldn't see the divine in him, couldn't recognize his humanity. That's the separation. That's the hell state, being so cut off from love and compassion that you can't see or serve the divine in others. And the consequence of that consciousness aren't someday, they're right now. So, sheep and goats. In Matthew 25:31 through 46, Jesus talks about separating people like sheep from goats, with one group going to eternal life and the other to eternal fire. But notice what determines which group you're in, whether you fed the hungry, welcomed the stranger, clothed the naked, cared for the sick and imprisoned. Whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me. This isn't about believing the right doctrine. It's about how you treat people. It's about whether you can see the Christ in every person you meet and the eternal fire for those who don't. That's the state of consciousness where you're so separate from divine love that you can't see how sacred we all are. That's hell. It's not a place you go after death, but a way that you're living right now. Outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of the teeth, Matthew 22:13 through 25:30. This phrase shows up multiple times in Jesus' teaching, and it sounds terrifying. But thinking about what outer darkness might actually mean, when you're cut off from the light of divine truth, you're separated from love. When you're lost in fear and judgment and ego, that's outer darkness. That's beginning in a place where you can't see clearly, can't find your way to connect with the light within you. And weeping and gnashing of the teeth, that's not about God torturing people. That's the anguish we feel when we're separated from our true nature. That's the suffering we experience when we've cut ourselves off from love. That's the pain of living in hell consciousness. So let me paint a picture for you. Picture one, a God who creates human beings with the capacity to think, question, and choose, tells them they have free will, but they better choose correctly or else. Sets up impossible standards, creates a torture chamber for anyone who doesn't meet those standards, tortures people for finite crimes, but tortures them forever, shows no mercy, no growth, no change, loves conditionally, forgives only some, created billions of people knowing most would end up in eternal torment. Not a great guy. Picture two, a God who is pure love, pure light, pure goodness, who created us as an expression of the divine, who is always calling us home but never forces us, who lets us experience the consequence of separation so we'll choose connection, who sees our true nature even when we can't, who never stops loving us, never gives up on us, never condemns us, whose forgiveness is infinite and whose door is always open. Now imagine both of these as human beings offering you a relationship. Which one would you choose? Which relationship sounds healthy, life-giving, based on love? Which sounds abusive, controlling, and based on fear? We know the answer when we're talking about human relationships. So why should it be different for God? Why would we accept from God what we'd recognize as abuse in humans? Unity says the second picture is true. God is love, just love, always love, and only love. And hell? Hell is what we create for ourselves and others when we lose our connection to that divine love. Hell is the state of consciousness where we believe we're separate from God. Hell is the suffering we experience when we forget who we really are. Here's what changes when you understand hell as a state of consciousness rather than a place of eternal torture. You're free. You can explore, ask questions, think for yourself. There's no invisible line you might accidentally cross that will damn you forever. There's no thought police monitoring your beliefs. Your spiritual growth comes from love, not fear. You don't practice because you're terrified of what will happen if you don't. You practice because connecting with divine feels good. It brings peace and it makes your life better. Your relationship with God is based on genuine connection, not terror. You can be honest about your doubts, your struggles, your questions. You don't have to pretend to believe things that don't resonate as true. And you don't have to perform certainty that you don't feel. You can trust that you're held in love no matter what. There's no failure so big, no sin so terrible, no belief so wrong that it will separate you from divine love forever. So let's take that divine love into our meditation now. So go ahead and get comfortable. Let yourself relax. And if you'd like, close your eyes. If not, just let your gaze soften. Take a few deep breaths. And bring to mind your relationship with the divine, with God, with Source, Spirit, whatever name feels right to you. And now gently ask yourself, what fears am I carrying in this relationship? What am I afraid God might do? What am I afraid makes me unworthy or unlovable? Maybe it's old hell teachings. Maybe it's fear of final judgment. Maybe it's fear about being gay or divorced or having had an abortion. Maybe it's feeling not good enough, not pure enough or faithful enough. Maybe it's fear that you've questioned too much, doubted too much, strayed too far. Whatever fear arises, just notice them. Don't judge yourself for having them. Just see them clearly. And now imagine that each fear is connected to you by a cord. These cords are attached to your heart, your mind, your body. They're weighing you down, keeping you bound to fear instead of leaving you free in love. So now I want you to imagine that you have in your hand a pair of scissors made of light. These are divine scissors. They can cut through anything. One by one, begin cutting the cords. As you cut each cord, say silently, I release this fear. It has no power over me. I am held in divine love. Cut the cord to the fear of hell. Cut the cord to the fear of judgment. Or the fear of not being good enough. Cut the cord to any teaching that told you God's love was conditional. With each cut, feel yourself getting lighter. Feel the freedom, the relief. And as you cut the cords, also practice surrender. Offer these fears up to divine love. You don't have to carry them anymore. You don't have to fight them. Just release them. Let them dissolve in the light. Keep cutting cords and surrendering fears until you feel complete, or at least more free than when you started. And bring your awareness to your heart. and feel the truth that lives there. You are loved completely, unconditionally, forever. Nothing you do or don't do, believe or don't believe can change that. You are not separate from God. You are an expression of God, and nothing can damn you to eternal separation. So let's rest in a moment of silence, just being held in this love. Now come back. Bring your awareness back into this room. Take a few deep breaths. When you're ready, open your eyes. You are free from fear-based theology. You're free from the terror of hell, and free to explore, question, think for yourself, and build a relationship with the divine based on love and trust instead of fear and control. God's love has no conditions or expectation. There's no hell waiting for people that don't get it right. Yes, our choices matter. Yes, there are consequences to living out of alignment with love. Yes, we can experience hell states of consciousness when we're separated from our divine nature. But those hell states aren't permanent. They're not punishment. They're experiences that call us back home. And the door is always open. The God of unity and new thought is not spiteful, patriarchal, torturing God that hell doctrine requires. The God we know is pure love, infinite compassion, endless forgiveness. A God who created you as an expression of the divine and who sees your true nature even when you can't. That's the God I choose to believe in. The one who invites instead of threatens, who loves instead of condemns, who calls us to grow in love, not cower in fear. And that God is inviting you right now into relationship. Not because you have to, not because you'll be punished if you don't, but because love is the truth of who you are. And coming home to that truth is the most liberating thing you'll ever do. And so it is.